everyone, and welcome to the Keeping Friendship Magic podcast, the podcast that combines social science with everything fandom and pop culture in the hopes of making a better tomorrow. I'm your host, Forward Progress. Unfortunately, Nova Rose is under the weather this week, so she won't be joining us today, but we are privileged to have our guest, the wonderful Riftwing of Riftwing Designs.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here again.
So this podcast idea came about, I think, a little while ago almost, between conversations with myself and Nova Rose here in Riftwing, where we kind of discovered our shared love of this wonderful little anime that's come out from Sanrio, of all places, of Aggretsuko. And we've been talking about wanting to kind of present on all the themes and topics of it, and it's just trying to find a place to line up, and then we realized this really lines up with the podcast. We'll finally have the opportunity to talk about all this. So we're going to go into a lot of the themes and delve. I can word today. Delve.
I'm ready to delve with you.
All right. Take two. Delve into these characters and what makes them tick. So, starting off, the one thing I say constantly about Aggretsuko is it seems like it's adulting the anime. It's really just a pure portrayal of what it means to get out there in the world and learn and grow up. And the lessons you learn now that you're an adult. And it's definitely hit home with a lot of us. It's a theme we all have to experience at some point or another. We all are going to have to step up and learn everything the world has to offer us, and all of the highs and lows and good people and people who just aren't right for us. So, that being said, let's dive in here and talk about the characters. And I guess we have to start with Aggretsuko here as the primary character of the series, the adorable Red Panda, who loves metal and is known to kick some tail at the karaoke bar. Or I should say the karaoke club, I guess they are over there, huh? So we have this character, we see them at the beginning looking into, kind of getting out of school, starting the job, and kind of flash forward to the realities of being out there on your own for the first time, being in the workplace, and what it does to you. Definitely a character I think many of us can associate with.
Yeah, and I would say it's also kind of like a funny combination with Office Space as well, where it really feels real, and some of the situations are kind of awkward, and some of them you're just like, this is ridiculous, and some of them you're like, I've been there before.
Yeah.
So it really is just a daily adventure trying to get through the grind. And one of the funny things is Aggretsuko is extremely optimistic. One of my favorite things in the Japanese version, which are the 1-minute shorts that were released prior to the Netflix adaptation, at the end of each 1-minute short, she would finish it off with this phrase, which pretty much said, and we have to do it all again tomorrow, but we're going to do it and be happy and excited about it. And so let's do it again. And that positivity, I think, really helps to carry her through.
Absolutely, definitely. It's interesting of how to maintain that positivity, especially with her character being how much stress she's put under, and throughout the series, she has that, you can see it climbing, the stress, the pressure, and the one thing that she does have, fortunately, is her outlet. In this case, death metal karaoke, and some fantastic death metal moments in the show, I have to say. It'd be hard to pick a favorite, but...
Yeah, and the other challenge that Aggretsuko has is that she's struggling in the Netflix adaptation to get into a relationship.
Mm-hmm. And relationships, obviously, both romantic and friendship-wise, there's always that the risk and reward and the hope within each person there, and trying to make the connection and everything. There's definitely a lesson learned throughout the series here about incompatibility with others, and especially in relationships, because that's the big things we find in her relationship struggles, is she keeps trying to push to make something work with someone she's incompatible with.
And she's also trying to escape from her job by just marrying off.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I've definitely taken in from her character is that this is someone who's always looking to some one specific thing and pining all their hopes that this one thing will make everything better.
Yeah.
And that's something where that's a dangerous line of thinking often. It's great to have goals, but if you put all, it's kind of that put all your eggs in one basket old adage, or
Well, the idea is that she keeps trying to find some way to get out of one bad situation, but she ends up in a few other bad situations as a result.
the thing here, and I think a good thing to take home is, if we look at this from having a goal and a vision and a goal setting strategy, shooting for just this one thing that's the moon, while it's very noble, there's a way to kind of have smart incremental goals to get to your ideal in life, and looking at all the factors, because let's face it, in life you never know what's going to pop up or happen. All right, so we've talked about Retsuko. Now there's a lot of other fantastic characters to talk about. I think we definitely need to have a conversation about Feniko.
Yeah, okay.
I that is one of my favorite moments, I think, in just any series I've ever seen.
Your spirit animal, right?
Yeah, it's funny because I'm not really like Feniko in some ways, but I just felt like as soon as I saw her on screen, I was like, that's my spirit animal. I love it.
Yeah, so in a way, she is addicted to social media, but she also points out how other people are using it. So there's kind of an interesting dichotomy that she has because she doesn't use it herself, but she is addicted.
Yeah, it's you know, her thing is not posting, it's about studying and watching. And the one thing about it, and to your point, is that having somebody who can have that ability to kind of see through the lines or see the other angles, which, let's face it, it's one thing we all need in our friends, and we get from having our close friends, is somebody who can look at the different angles in a situation we need them to.
And not just the selfies and the thigh pics.
Exactly. Selfie dessert, what is it? Selfie dessert
Latte art.
art. That's what it was.
But she does a lot of that also to look out for her friends, right?
Oh yeah, that's the one big thing we've seen, is if somebody's coming after her friends, she's instantly like wide eyebrowed, like, what are you saying? She's always there to help and to be loyal, which is, again, one of those characteristics that you just always want to hang on to.
I think the most memorable scene for me with her is when I think it was Christmas Eve, and Retsuko was stuck at work and she faked this wonderful Instagram picture, and she started to figure out what it was, and all of a sudden it kind of set everybody's alarms off. And then it ended up pushing Haida to try and be the knight in shining armor. I mean, she always was such a good friend to Haida and knew that she needed to push him because she couldn't say anything herself that would make anything happen.
Mm-hmm. We've definitely seen some interesting things with Haida then as well. Haida's so endearing as a character. You just want to root for him. And he is a character who definitely seems to be working towards finding himself. No, it's all in the pursuit of Retsuko, but there's definitely a sense that he's trying to be something just to impress Retsuko and trying to figure out what that is.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Haida is that he is not confident, and even
Mm-hmm.
though he is interested in dating Retsuko, he is not one of the stereotypical office guys. He's actually kind of the opposite, which is cute to see in the anime. And of course, we have the point of view where you do see all of those different pieces. It's not just like from him or from Retsuko, and that they don't connect.
Yeah, exactly. And it's definitely interesting to see how things have progressed after Haida finally does confess his feelings. There's still that kind of that relationship, especially from Retsuko's end. It seems like almost very little changed for her. That she still looks to Haida as her good friend, which it's not something you always see.
No.
Those types of situations do have a tendency a lot of times to add that extra strain. Um, I don't know if I would say, I think for a time it gave Haida the extra strain, but he's still kind of bounced back a little bit and still very protective of Retsuko.
Yeah, it's really interesting because they between Feneko, Haida, and Retsuko, that they're like the trio, right? They're the
Mm-hmm.
triangle,
There are
and
Charlie's
they
Angels, I
support
guess.
each other in work all the time.
Yeah, and that's a definite thing when we talk about relationships and friendships, of going through those experiences together can definitely unite a friendship very strong. It gives you that common bond to working towards something together to build a relationship on, and it's definitely between the three of them a very strong bond that's making it through all of whatever chaos is going on around them at that time.
Especially when some of the chaos becomes inside jokes, like when Subona always wants for somebody to open up the jar and she tries to make Retsuko do it, and Haida does.
Yeah.
But then it kind of turns over because once Retsuko starts doing yoga, she's like all beefy, and so they start to laugh about those kind of like inconsistencies.
Yeah. Oh, Sonoda. Sonoda. I It's interesting because every character really has gotten a chance to show more of a dynamic side to themselves, as we've gone through the series. Because Sonoda always comes off originally as the stereotypical ditzy woman who's just using her body or flirtation to get her way in the office place. But we've gotten to explore a little bit about what's in her mind as she goes through and does these things. And you find out there's kind of more to her than you would give credit for.
Yeah, for good and for bad, I suppose, because while it started off that she was kind of stealing and causing the anger for Retsuko, in the end, it starts to show Retsuko ways to vent and to post and to consider that she has something other people want to see, right? That the
Mm-hmm.
even though social media can be bad, the fact is that you have a voice, and that was something I think that they taught each other.
Yeah, definitely. There can be that power in kind of giving yourself that voice and giving an outlet to yourself, definitely from a self-confidence perspective.
All right.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that was all I had for her.
All right, fantastic.
I was ready to swing into their boss.
Oh yes, Tone is definitely. I spoke to this at a panel previously last year's BronyCon a little bit about how in Aggretsuko, Tone is definitely come as the role as the big bully to Retsuko, and Retsuko has to endure so much, not just from Tone, from all over the office, but Tone is definitely sold off as the misogynistic, old time, do it this way boss. And I know there was an interesting point we've discussed before about kind of generational influences here.
Yes. Yeah,
So,
it's very interesting how Tone is obviously showing a lot of the characteristics of boomers with the back in my day kind of talk, the you'll never be as good as it was for us, and his amazingly uh, elite skills at the abacus.
yeah, that's I've maybe used an abacus once in my life, so all power to him.
I'm sure they animated it perfectly too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's just, it's impressive.
It's quite something to witness.
And it's very interesting how he is all about the bottom line. He wants other people to serve him, but at the same time, when the bottom line doesn't happen, he folds under the pressure of his management. And one of the times when Retsuko is deeply in love with a space cadet, I believe, she wasn't working, and he's like, "You guys, we got to pick up the slack. You know, stay late, work harder." And he will do that because he cares about the company.
Yeah.
Which is also
There's
a very Japanese thing.
Oh yeah. Very much so. Tone is very much easy, at least at the beginning of the series, to kind of just peg as that one note jerk of a boss. But we start to see some layers as it goes throughout, and especially being that the guy, so to speak, who's I believe he even says it in season 1 when he has a talk with Retsuko about her relationship with Space Cadet, and just says it straight to her. And I believe he says something to the extent of, "I'm the one who's brave enough to tell you like it is."
Yeah.
Which sometimes, that's that thing of, there's a lot of times something more deeper even underneath that hard exterior we can see in certain people.
Yeah. And it's funny because they have such an on and off relationship, but some of it, like the karaoke social, right? So talking about this, the one thing that I thought was hilarious, besides the fact that he says he doesn't remember what happened,
Yeah.
is that he is an amazing rapper.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Like, can you take what he's throwing down? And Retsuko's like, hmm. And then
You
she
know,
just like rage metals and like blows everybody into like they all pass out, right?
no, I'm not gonna lie. I would love to see that fusion where we combine rap battles with just metal battles, I guess you would say.
It's too cool.
I
That
I
is
would
definitely a watchable scene.
I would pay money. But we also get to see him briefly from the perspective of his dealings with his family. We get to see his kids briefly in an episode in season
Yeah.
2, and he talks at least one point in the series about kind of giving himself in and doing his role and making the family and putting them first.
Yeah, absolutely. And he does have quite the family for sure.
Yeah. And it definitely, though, it kind of plays in looking at the generational gap, like we talked about earlier, is Tone's way of looking at the world could be comparative to, say, the boomers, and then Retsuko would be like, say, a millennial or late stage an early stage? I don't know. But and then you could look at other characters in the series as Gen Z, and of course the one that comes to mind is Anai.
Yes. Oh, Hanai.
Anai,
It's so painful to watch because we've all been in one of those really awkward situations where like they can't talk to you in person and it has
yes.
to be your response has to be in writing.
It's I had a professor who presented this article about texting and how it wasn't it was keeping us from really connecting to people, and it's not real talk, and it won't bring us together. And I said, there are times where there's something I knew I couldn't say out loud, but I could write down and communicate in a text. So in some ways, it did open up those doors for me more to do the writing session, just because that's how I needed to process it at that time.
Yeah, not everyone is comfortable and it has been trained that way. I mean, it's the same thing again with the generations, right? So
Mm-hmm.
then the millennials were the ones that were stuck in between. They kind of had to learn both, the typing and the writing and the talking. But the Z's, some of them got left out and they only had the digital training, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have to do public speaking in school? Like, did you
Mm-hmm.
learn keyboarding? I mean, these are the questions that you can't necessarily blame them, but at the same time, we do have a leniency now towards using the digital media.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the way that he connected. I mean, you saw how it was when he tried to answer the phone.
Oh, yes. Yep. Uh, th-
It was bad.
It was so bad. Oh.
Oh my goodness. But the thing is, the best part about Anai is that his redemption, it all came back to finding a place for him to fit in and showing his talents.
Indeed.
And that's something that it almost seemed impossible for a very long time because he was passive aggressively harassing everyone in the office.
Indeed. And once he gets to that point where he does get to kind of show that he's contributing, showing something, um, he seems to greatly mellow out once he's had that opportunity. So it's now granted, I know we've had that discussion before about it's even he's even creepier in Japanese, right?
Yeah, very much so. It's extremely awkward, but it does have a better redemption because it's so much more black and white. I mean, he do you remember the way he is redeemed in the Netflix version?
Yakisoba.
Yeah, so it's similar, I believe, in the Japanese one where they're having like the bake off and all, but it's I think they stretched it out in a really awkward way. And the funny thing is, I rewatched them a couple months ago, but because they're so different and yet so similar, it's really hard to deconflict the two without like Cliff's notes for both. Yeah.
Yeah. Anai definitely he gives off the creep vibes for a good portion of his run. Um and but then he calms down a lot, especially or definitely in the English version. Once he gets through the yakisoba, he does calm down a lot more cuz it's almost like for that action of him, it made him feel he is part of this now, so he can let his guard down almost.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the idea is that he couldn't let his guard down until he felt safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's true for a lot of us. That
Yeah.
trust and the friendship, right?
Mm-hmm. There's the one other interesting note here is the person who kind of pulled him out of his shell and got him to go for it essentially was Kabe, who had been presented to us very much as almost just the stereotypical office gossip at first. And then we get to see so much more as the series goes on, as she proves to be that person that can see something different in an eye and appreciate that there's a way to get him to open up. And then we
Hmm.
get to see how much she has for her family life.
Yeah, she is much more nurturing in the Netflix version, and I think that's super cute, especially like the hiding the Christmas presents kind of stuff.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
but she sees and she knows how to speak to people in ways that make them feel valued. And actually, that reminded me. So in the Japanese version, it was Retsuko that saw like his lunch boxes. He would make lunch boxes with the food, and so I think she was the one that helped him more in the Japanese version. And if any of those listeners know exactly what it is, please write in.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is they used their skills to help him to connect. And I think for Akabe, like that's the family and understanding definitely helped a lot.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right.
I think we got to get into relationships now.
Oh yes. So so Retsuko's relationships. We've had two major ones that we've gotten to see so far. Um I guess we might as well start talking about Space Cadet.
Let's do it.
Space Cadet. Oh my gosh. You know what's sad? I don't know if I remember his actual name. Other than Space Cadet.
Risasuke?
Risasuke, that's it. Okay.
Yeah. It's interesting because he is, I would say, even cuter than Retsuko when he's in his like ditzy face
Oh
look.
my gosh, yes.
It's an
Oh,
adorable, very huggable male red panda. And so obviously the species themselves start to ship the two as soon as you realize there's another
oh
red
yeah.
panda in the office.
Like it's one of those where you imagine seeing it in a picture and it being the perfect picture of the couple, like just by looking at them. That's how it's almost set up. Um,
Yeah.
but then come to find that pretty much everything Sasuke does is all because somebody's telling him to. He's kind of, since they call him Space Cadet, that he doesn't really take any action and have confidence to do it himself, so to speak. He's just kind of doing what others tell him. And that's something, especially for Aggretsuko here, in a relationship, how you want how you can handle that, how you can have that, and only that.
And the interesting thing is, it's a perfect storm because, on the other hand, Retsuko just wanted to get in a relationship because at that point she was so desperate to stop working and didn't see a future for herself. And then all of a sudden, this lands in her lap after an extremely interesting date night, and
And
where
you know
she,
what? That goes back to the conversation about communicating over text.
yeah, it does. Expand on this.
Yeah. So on the date, they can't hear each other because they're quiet, and especially Risasuke. He's very, very muted in his speech. So they end up pulling out their phones and just texting one another, and they're essentially having their date in front of each other, but communicating over text.
Yeah, and
So
and
yeah.
Feniko is wasted at that point, so she thinks
Oh
they're not
yeah.
even talking to each other.
That scene where Fenico all of a sudden goes, "I love date night" or whatever it was.
Date nights are the best ever.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, they end up, she gets sick and he ends up taking her back to her apartment. We think it was innocent and we think it was probably egged on. And from there, she wants to go on a date, and he is actually made to ask her because she's like, "Oh, she was
Mm-hmm.
doing the coffee hints for how long?
Oh my goodness, that was woof. And the
Dropping him
little
off,
notes and yeah.
flirting, looking dreamy-eyed, and then all of a sudden they're going on this what I would say is like the Disneyland, right? So this dream date, and that's kind of where it all started to fall apart. And one of the things that I had mentioned before is that in a separate discussion is that Retsuko, when she really didn't want to go to work in the beginning of the series, she would pull a blanket over her head and say, like, when I count to 10, I'm going to get out of bed. And now, when she's in this date and things start to go bad, she's realizing that she is in a dream, but she will not. She's in denial. And so she says, like, in the bathroom, when I count to 10, I'm going to be a good girlfriend because she's realizing like her feet are sore, that there's no good communication, things aren't working. And it's beginning to be a way of her making herself believe that she can make it work out. And as you said earlier, sometimes these things aren't correct. It's not the right thing at the right time.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest things to always take away from Retsuko's character, especially in relationship wise, is that she keeps trying to hold on to something and not listening to what her feelings are telling her and not
Mm.
allowing herself to be open to that other possibility. And that's a big takeaway of, if you don't open yourself up to that, are you just going to make yourself suffer by not listening to yourself and what your inner monologue is telling you is right?
Yeah, be true to yourself. And we see that especially through the comparison of her doing less karaoke when they're dating. And in fact, she's like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't need it. And her friends, which we haven't mentioned yet, but Agore and Washimi, they're like, something's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So expand on that friendship.
Okay, so it's wonderful at the beginning of the series. We meet Gori and Washimi just as two strong, powerful walk-in women walking down the hall. They seem to be, the baddest chicks in town.
Completely unfazed.
Oh yeah, just we run this.
Yeah.
So, but as the series goes on, we get to have a run-in at yoga, which is just funny for us.
Protein.
Protein. Trust me, if you've seen the series, yes. So at yoga, they run into each other, and we get to see these strong, powerful women who are in, just strong positions, leaders in their field. But we get to see that more vulnerable side and the softer side, and they basically kind of jump Retsuko into their plans the one night after yoga. But it's like you can see their goal in the whole thing is just to make a new friend.
Extremely authentic. And in fact, it's cute because Gore was really shy. She's like, oh my gosh, I can't say anything. And it was a little more awkward in the Netflix version for sure. But that they allow themselves to be vulnerable, not only in meeting Aggretsuko, but also like sometimes you would see the cutscenes when they're walking down the hallway and then they turn a corner and they're like, ooh, that was making my back ache,
Yeah.
The fact that they can be vulnerable and show that side makes them more realistic and I think more powerful.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's a misconception, and I would say especially for strong women, but you can make the case for strong men too, but that kind of stereotypical image of, someone like that in power has to be kind of that ironclad, invulnerable, just, not showing the emotion, just like that. And we get to see, no, people are people. Just because somebody gets into a position doesn't mean they don't have feelings.
Absolutely. And one of the interesting things about it as well is that because they bring their authentic selves to this relationship with Retsuko, when they're in karaoke, besides the protein vision giving them the right song number, when Retsuko does start singing death metal, they're headbanging right along. They're like, this is cool stuff. And that's something that's shined through the rest of the show in that when she decided, actually she was lying to herself and she wanted to break off the relationship with Space Cadet, that she would sing to him. Mm-hmm. And it was a little awkward because he didn't connect there. And she was like, yeah, it's not me. That's not me. That's not you. Mm-hmm. This isn't going to work.
And I know we've talked about that when she ends her relationships in the series, it's been there. She shows them her true self in that moment. That part of herself that is a core of who she is. So by opening herself up, it creates the ultimate moment of will you, won't you? Like, this is the real me. If this is going to go, this has to be compatible. And, she knows what's going to come from it going in, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was that little glimmer of hope of, I'll show them this side of me and they'll love it.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, is there nothing better than like finding someone else that shares that common interest with you, Absolutely. Whether it's in friendship or in a personal relationship. Mm-hmm. It might not work all the time, but when it does, it's a beautiful thing.
I've said that if the way for the show to end almost best would be if she found somebody that she connected with and it shows them going to the karaoke club together and jamming out to death metal together. That would be like
so cute.
Ultimate. Because let's face it, that's really the great metaphor here is this is my true self and being true to yourself in your relationships. Because if you aren't being true to who you are and you're projecting a false self, you're not creating a real bond. You're creating something based on, on this other vision when you're not just being who you really are. And that gets old.
Yeah, that's really well said. So from here, the question that I have is where do we think that her love of death metal originated? And originally we were saying, well, what if it was like that because her mother is actually kind of abusive and does not understand it? Was that where she was venting her anger, her fear, her frustration?
Yeah, I would definitely accept that as a possible reality. That'll be my headcanon now. Um, but it makes a lot of sense in that there's evidence once we meet Retsuko's mother, there's an obvious sense of pushing an agenda onto Retsuko. And
More than one agenda. Have you tried to date this nice gentleman?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, several agendas kept popping up there.
They were all photoshopped.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
everything from are you eating healthy, taking care of yourself? Will you wear this cute dress, which was a ploy to get her photo for the assigned dating to try and get her
Mm-hmm.
into an arranged marriage, which is again that big generational difference.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's there's the generational. I think conflict is almost too strong of a word, but it's definitely conflict. Is just a it's a constant thing, not only in the series but in the real world. We're always going to have next generations coming up. We're always going to be evolving and changing, and everybody's going to be a little different because they've had different experiences. But we all have to work together to make the world work, to make the world happen. It doesn't happen with just one generation. It happens through a combination of wills of everyone working together.
Yeah, and what's interesting about her relationship with her mom is that she wants to avoid it so much that she was starting to make up excuses like, "Oh, I am not available." And her mom's like, "Why?" And she's like, I'm taking driving lessons." And then her mom's like, "That's great. Then you can support your dad and me and we'll help to pay for it." And in this was kind of her own undoing, right? So when you lie, you get caught in that trap, and it was kind of a small little lesson and be careful with your fallacies. But ultimately, it also landed with her meeting Tadano.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Tadano.
Our we even though he's a donkey, we're saying he's our cute little unicorn boy.
Yeah. He's I call him my ironic husbando. Because I love it. I love him so much, but the thing about that is that's his one thing is he doesn't see the need to get married and institutionalize his relationship or his love.
And he is also extremely authentic as well, but in a different way.
Exactly. And that's the thing here is having this relationship where there's no bad guys in this scenario. There's you can't really look and go, "Oh, it was his fault or her fault in this sense." This was just a situation where they did not they were not compatible in a very specific way that meant a lot to Retsuko. And that's the ultimate undoing. There is, okay, I'm trying to fit into this for you, but I can't do that. It's not being me. It's not being the authentic me. I need to be me.
And it's interesting because that's the kind of the character development from the beginning when she wanted to be in a relationship with a rich guy just to leave work. Now all of a sudden she has this gift in her lap with private jets for ramen, and she realizes through that character growth that even seeing this, she can't just take it and go. She has to be happy.
Yep. Always have to find that way to show off that happiness. The true happiness comes from feeling secure in yourself. It boils down to a lot about self-esteem and self-confidence, because a lot of us do tend to kind of project that something that's a little off from our authenticity a lot of the times, depending on the situation we're in. But you'll find that the situations where your body is happiest, both physically, mentally, etc., is where you're not worried about projecting anything other than this is me and this is my natural response. Your body will thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh man, yeah, and it's Tadano's interesting. I would. He'd be interesting to have in our world, I think, because he wants to help the world, which is a very noble cause. Okay. Ooh, who have we not covered now at this point?
I think we're doing pretty well.
Yeah, definitely. So, as we said, there's a lot here. There's definitely some strong major themes about authenticity, being the real you, and having to work with different generations. And I'd say even beyond that, having to interact and work with the various types of people you're going to meet in your life. You're going to have the Anais, the Haidas, the Kaivas, all of that you're going to have as a part of your life. So as you grow, you have to learn how to handle all different natures of people while still remaining true to yourself. And I think that's one of the greatest struggles we have.
Yeah, and the fact that not every day is going to be a good day, right?
Oh,
The
absolutely.
idea, especially that there were days when she's like, I'm just exhausted and want to go home and I have to stay late, and somebody dumps more work on their desk. And she is not one that would talk back. She will take it without saying anything, and and she'll actually work harder for that. So I think that in a way, there could be more lessons on her making sure to balance her work and her home life, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's definitely been something to come up. And I know we've talked about office space in these terms, um, of kind of what makes Retsuko tick, or Aggretsuko the series, is this vision of that. How do I upend this, on imbalance when it comes to work?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's even applicable now, right? And we're all trying to
Mm-hmm.
find this new balance, whether it's you have to work from home or you can't work now. And what is this new future? How do you make it work? And I guess not to be punny, but that's the idea.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
there's a lot of work going on. So the as you
Oh
said,
god.
there's everybody every day, there's something new and something bad happening. How can you hold on to the goodness, the friendships, the relationships that you've made and realize that work is temporary?
Mm-hmm. And you know everything else too. The one thing we constantly see in this series is that through Retsuko's friendships that she has built, when she slips up, they're there to support her. They're there to build her back up. Or in the case of the end of season 2, randomly abduct a millionaire and drive him to a karaoke club.
As one is wont to do.
But for noble intentions here.
I just want to know what the karaoke receptionist is thinking throughout all of this.
Yeah, like, what is going on? Who are these people?
Like every time he asks for how many is in her party, he's like, "What's going on?"
Yeah. Well, she's obviously highly the regular there too.
Yeah, it's a really interesting culture, and I think that we would definitely, if we ever get to go to like a Gretzico kind of con, we should definitely be doing karaoke after the panel.
Oh goodness, you bet we will.
It'd be so fun. Because then your voice is already done, and you can thrash and not have to worry about not being able to
See,
talk in
yeah,
the morning.
exactly. I was gonna say that's after the panel is when I will scream like that.
It's a skill, man.
Pro tip out there: as a panelist, you need a lot of water, and you can lose your voice if you're not careful. So,
I really want to know what Retsuko's routine is to make sure that she can talk in the morning.
yeah, I had friends when I was younger who tried to learn. They were literally trying to learn how to do those kind of extreme metal lyrics, and they were talking about trying to train themselves. And my one friend was like, man, I coughed up more blood than I thought I would doing that. I'm like, you what?
Oh, Yeah, I mean, as she actually mentioned at the beginning when she was teaching Gore and Washimi, you have to do it right or you'll hurt yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's a skill. It is a type of singing where you constrict your throat and push the air through your vocal cords in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure her microphone is also especially attuned to that frequency. So,
When you have your own portable microphone that's at the ready in your purse, I think, yeah.
and it's really amazing that even if she has the self-awareness to know at work if she needs to just sneak off to the bathroom and just give one guttural roar, right?
Yeah, and that's a big thing. We mentioned tone as a bully earlier, is having a coping mechanism, and maybe not even just for bullies, but just in general, is you can only handle so much stress at a time. You can only handle so much pressure, and recognizing in your body that you need an outlet to vent or to get it out, have a release, and not let it build up, because that is one of the most unhealthy things we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting because even though she was taking yoga, and I'm starting to take yoga teacher training as well, and you're learning that yoga is a way for some people to relax and to listen to their bodies. But for her, she literally just wanted to do it to get buff and find a guy.
I mean, that was the reasoning behind a lot of things I've done in my life. But that's another story.
Yeah, we're not this time, unfortunately.
But yeah, you have to find what's right for you, and it's not always going to be the same thing as your friends or your colleagues. It's going to be unique to you. Sometimes it'll line up, sometimes not. But if you're being true to it and holding that as a part of yourself, I think that's the most important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, I would be interested to hear for listeners out there if you guys do take listener mail, and if you don't, I'll take the listener mail. What are ways that you guys are venting and dealing with frustration? I mean, these are crazy times right now.
Oh,
And
yes.
if you don't have something, that's a really good thing to sit down and think about, whether it's playing video games, singing. For me, it's gardening. I like to just go outside and put my hands in the dirt and bring life into these plants.
Yeah.
And that is like it's a Zen release. I don't have to scream. I don't have to run. But that's what works for me.
Yeah, and for me, it'll be different things for different situations a lot of the time. It all depends on how exactly my body needs to be grounded in that moment.
Hmm.
But there are times where I need that release in the sense of let's go. There are days where I need to put on a really just heavy, fast Metallica song to get myself motivated and just headbang right along with it. Some days
That's
that's what
right.
I need. Other days it is my yoga, or it is cooking, or just talking with a friend, having a conversation. Honestly, that's one of the biggest stress relievers and almost simplest you can have, is just talking with your friends, having people that are there that will listen and just let you get it out, because there's a big difference between thinking about something and actually saying the words out loud. It gives more of a finality, and a lot of times it helps you work through those problems that have been on your mind stressing you out.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I, I can see that happening. Even sometimes you don't understand until you're able to talk it out.
Mm-hmm.
Really weird. So sometimes I'm able to do lucid dreaming if I'm not too exhausted. And one time when we just started to get into the pandemic, I was explaining it to someone in my dream, and the word that I woke up to was frustrated.
Oh yeah.
And it hadn't really solidified in my head, but I woke up and it was just that, oh. So I don't, if you can do that, that's great. But if not, talk to somebody. Yeah. Whether it's your friends, family, or mental professionals. I know that a lot of folks are doing online coaching now and online counseling. So that's very good that we're able to have that opportunity.
It's just amazing that we have that ability to connect, at least still in these ways. And I think that's the biggest thing I've been trying to convey to everybody is, despite, how terrible the situation is, we have the ability. We literally, we have the technology. We can get through this together while apart. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
exactly.
And, it's definitely a time to take advantage of that. And everybody's going to cope with this current crisis in their own way. But just like we've been talking about with everything else, is having that way that you do cope with it, you do handle it. There's no right or wrong way necessarily to deal with this type of thing. It's the important thing is that you do take it on. And
Yeah.
you
And don't harm yourself and don't harm
Well,
others.
absolutely.
Find a safe way of getting it out.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's there's going to be different things. I know there's a lot of talk of people being like, oh, well, I'm going to pick up a new habit or hobby, or I'm going to work on this major piece or whatever. And some of us, that's not our thing. And you should not feel bad if that's not your thing, to jump into some big project to de-stress from this very just hard time.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because a lot of times we've been seeing people posting again on Instagram, right? So going back to Fenico and Sonoda, like
Yep.
you'll see the best parts of it. But unlike Sonoda, when Fenico, you look into it more, there's always something behind that picture. You can post things and show off your accomplishments, but also remember that not everyone has a perfect day every day. And maybe this quarantine, you get nothing quote unquote productive done, but it's productive just to get through it and to stay healthy and to take care of yourself. I know I'm under that pressure myself. I feel like, oh, geez, I haven't been creative enough. I haven't been sewing and this and that. But the truth is, I'm almost doing 2 full-time jobs between yoga training and my normal job. So I don't have that time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not an excuse. It's just I have to realize that I won't be able to do all these amazing posts that I'm seeing because for me, I'm not in that situation and it's not working for me, and I shouldn't judge myself or be harsh on myself because I'm not where I think I should be just because it's what I'm seeing.
And I think this is a big thing to apply even when we're not dealing with a current pandemic, when we calm down still, but you're going to have those times nevertheless where you're going to need something, and it's important not to hold yourself to a impossible standard that you're never going to meet. So I'm looking at the time, and we're getting low on time, about to wrap it up. Don't know if you had anything else before we wrap up the Aggretsuko talk that you wanted to throw in.
This has been a fantastic conversation, and it's really fun to see the evolution of the themes that are in the show. So I got nothing else to add. This was fantastic. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Well, I obviously want to thank everyone for joining us today. Myself and Nova Rose will hopefully be doing Ponyfest Online 2 coming up in a couple of weeks, and we're looking into doing more smooth streams, so definitely be on the lookout for that. We're hoping to just keep that going. Who knows how long we'll keep it going, but with everything right now, it's great to get some stuff out there for you guys, and trust me, it gives me something to do. It gives me my out right now. my creative outlet.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Like I said, I hope to work with you guys more in the future. For those of you listening, again, I'm Riftwing Designs, all one word. It's my handle everywhere, and it's also my Gmail. So if you'd like to reach out, I'd love to hear from you.
All right. Well, with that, thank you again for joining us today. And as always, everybody, remember to keep friendship magic. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.